Hello there everyone, and welcome to today's episode of D&D Horror Stories. Tabletop RPGs are a great way to spend time with current friends, and even make some new ones. Though sometimes, the opposite can happen, and people that you consider friends can have their worst traits be brought out when playing games like D&D. Much like what happens in today's stories. But first, it's time for cats. Now, let's get into these stories. DM blows 5-year friendship for titty pics. By Reddit user RNNGWA. Players in this story. Peters, DM that asks for nudes. C, other male friend. I met this DM 5 years ago, and we became fast friends and had a lot of the same interests. We had some fun times. I also met most of my current D&D party through his games, so something good came of it, at least. Anyways, Peters had a crush on me, asked me out, and I said nah and moved on. A couple years after, he asked me for nudes. I say nah, and we move on again, with me telling him that it's fine that he asked, because I was a fool. He was very clearly into me, so obviously that other players in the games would make jokes about it. It was cringe, and I was very clear to him that I never reciprocated, but still, he persisted. Around this time, Peters started to get territorial. C was one of my close friends, and Peters would constantly condescend, argue with, and just generally be an asshole to him, to the point where C almost left the group because of it. Even if C was 100% right, Peters would go out of his way to prove C wrong, or pull the "well, I just don't see it that way" bullshit. They argued about how elf trance worked for a week, and Peters was wrong, by the way. I talked to Peters about his shitty attitude a few times, but nothing ever changed. It got worse when I started DMing. Peters literally nuked an entire campaign because he didn't like how the rest of the party was playing. He would literally, during break, take one of the players, C, into a private call and fucking rage at how everyone else was playing. The campaign after that, I split the group to figure out who the problem was, and he forcibly ended the campaign early via throwing a portable hole into a bag of holding. I could have salvaged it, but by that point, it was obvious who the problem was, so I just ended it. I kicked him out of my next campaign and told him why. Now for the quote-unquote fun part. I ended up talking to some of my other friends who were part of his games, all female presenting, keep in mind, and we discovered that Peters asked all of us for titty pics. He would also call everyone while drunk off his ass, but this was something I managed to avoid by not accepting cold calls on Discord. He was also telling one of the other female players that there was nothing between him and I, while at the same time, he was trying to get with me and saying shit like, "I just want to wake up next to you." True player behavior. The group convo was the impetus for us all leaving the Discord at once. It was during the convo that provoked everyone to leave at once, when the husband of one of the female players was contacted by Peters with some guilt-trippy bullshit about how us leaving seemed like a coordinated effort. The husband responded with, "Maybe if you didn't ask all your female friends for tit pics, including my wife, they wouldn't have ghosted you." It was the funniest shit I've ever seen. The whole thing is just so weird to me. I'd never been in a situation before where someone was so blatantly an asshole and sexually explicit and weird. It really made you think, is this actually happening whenever he would do something? I think that might be partially the reason why we let it go on for so long without saying anything. That, and not wanting to rock the boat. He was the DM after all. If we pissed him off, we'd probably get kicked and not get to hang out with our friends. So yeah, I could honestly write horror story after horror story about his behavior. Moral of the story: call people out if they're being weird to your friends. Most of the time, people want to avoid rocking the boat, so they'll take abuse or creepiness instead of speaking out, and suffer in silence. Yeah, OP hit the nail on the head there at the end. Always say something if someone is being this creepy towards you. chances are that the rest of the group will have your back, or even have their own experiences with them. I can understand not wanting to rock the boat for fear of breaking the group apart, but you can always cut out the creep and just stay playing with everyone else. Let's move on. The Heist That Deflated with a Whimpering Fart Sound by Reddit user d&Ddoge. This is the story about how a problem player was ruining my campaign, so I took a break from that campaign to do a mini one, and then the same problem player ruined the mini campaign because my stupid chimp brain could not comprehend that he was the problem. I was having trouble in my main long-style campaign. We were 21 sessions in, and my party was not getting along. The characters hated each other. There were threats being tossed left and right, and I was railroading to hell and back because I couldn't comprehend letting the players do more than Mass Effect dialogue choices. Bad times were had. My frustration culminated in me recognizing that I needed to step back from this campaign, and I wanted to do something different. When I expressed this to my players, they supported me and said that they would play whatever I ran. Jormbo, a person who has a long-running stain on my personal D&D history, suggested that we play in the same world that I'd made, but in a different place. Okay, that's cool. We'll play in some place that I foreshadowed to them many times, and they've all expressed an interest in visiting, but it was all the way across the continent. A lawless anarch town where all kinds of wacky craziness can happen. I asked what they wanted to play, as I didn't want to do a one-shot. I wanted a mini-campaign, a 4 or 5 session long little adventure in its own self-contained bubble of playtime, and Jormbo suggested a heist. I thought to myself, man, that will be fun. I have no idea how to write out a heist story, but that's fine. I can let the players figure out what they want to do, and how they want to prepare for it. I told them all to prepare characters, and they, did. My partner made Poppy, a Zwerfnublin artificer with a gambling addiction who needed a payout so she could relieve herself of some debts. Our third player made Vorther, a dragonborn barbarian who had the worst gimmick I'd ever seen. A Bruce Banner/Hulk type, but his Hulk side was just a gigantic childish idiot who liked to fart and scream while carrying a lance everywhere. Then finally, Jormbo made a rogue, but he didn't want to be dexterous. He wanted to do a strength rogue, so I made him a custom subclass of a thug rogue. He also wanted to be a Goliath psychopath who just liked killing, and that was his whole character, just a big old murderer. So that's our heist team. Not great. Really, only one of them recognized the assignment, and there wasn't really any communication, despite us all sitting down and discussing the heist stuff. But it's fine. I didn't plan on a big epic, sweaty brow test of precision and skill. It's still D&D, baby. So I planned out the heist. They were going to steal a cake from a local mob lord who was trying to get in pretty with the king after his inauguration, which in this town was just the winner of a local tournament. An ogre named Mungo had won for the past 11 years, and this mob boss was an up-and-coming crime lord looking to secure his place in the city so he could spread his operations from the safety of its walls. The cake needed 8 hours to be made and would be prepared the day before the king arrived, so they needed to skirt the window of stealing the cake in a time frame where the mob boss doesn't have the time to bake another, but close enough that they might not even realize that the cake was swiped, so that it's extra humiliating for him. Also, the guy who hired them wanted the cake in one piece, so he could eat it all by himself. The players loved the concept. A heist to steal a cake was just the kind of fun that they wanted to be part of, and for the most part, things went well. They started making contacts with people who had blueprints for the mob boss's manor. They were getting in contact with the local tech junkies to make a way to transport the cake unscathed, and they were scoping out the route of egress to make sure that they'd be able to shake off any pursuers. They, of course, met some friction from other crime factions, and even from a faction of wannabe cops who wanted to bring the glory of law and order to the city. The first session went off real well, despite some quirks and hitches. It seemed like they were all ready to come back and start putting some other plans in place. Then Session 2 happened. No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Session 2 hadn't happened yet. Session 2 was literally just the starting. I asked everyone, as I do every session, what happened the last time we played. They gave me a recap, and just as I was about to say, "Alright, you guys are here and this just happened, what you want to do?" Jormbo speaks up. "Yeah, hopefully we can finish this today. I'm bored with this already." It was a really painful arrow through the heart, I'm not gonna lie. I asked what he meant, if that was in character or what. He reaffirmed that, yeah, he's bored. In fact, he doesn't understand why this is going any longer than a single session. A heist shouldn't take that long. I was baffled. Poppy and Vorthur defended me a bit, reminding him that it was his idea to do this, that I wanted to do a multi-session thing, and that a grand chunk of all heist movies is the setup. He brushed it off and said, "Yeah, I don't want to make a whole thing of it. Anyway, continue." I kinda lost all of the wind in my sail after that. I went from excitedly trying to flesh out different crime bosses and factions for them to make deals with, to just prepping the manor map and then rushed them along. We were done by the third session, and it really sucked. I never got an apology either. I told him that it hurt, and he told me that he was just being honest, and if he lied, it would have been even more painful for me. When I read it all out, it seems so small, but in the moment, it felt like such a blatant piss in my mouth. He didn't express to me between sessions anything other than Vorthur's character being annoying, so it's not like I saw this coming. In the end, it was an adventure that Poppy and Vorthur look back on fondly, but whenever I think of it, I just think of that moment and how much it crushed not just my desire to run the fucking thing, but also ruined my confidence as a DM for a very long time. Anyway, Jormbo has long since been kicked for being a piece of shit in a variety of ways, but this experience still wasn't the eye-opener that I needed, that this person who had been my friend for 15 years was a poison in my life. Thanks for reading, and I hope that if this happens to you, you've got the confidence and willpower to just fucking punch them in the mouth. Yeah, that's a pretty fucked up thing to say to a DM. They put a lot of work into creating a world with situations and characters for the party to play in, and for someone to say something like that, I can see how it can be deflating. Everyone else was just having a good time with it, and if Jormbo wasn't enjoying it as much as everyone else, he could just shut the hell up about it and just roll with the punches. He reminds me of that person that sees someone enjoying something, and he just has to let them know why he thinks it's stupid. And, unfortunately, this is not the last tale of Jormbo, as OP has posted yet another story about this player. But before we hop into that, if you're enjoying the video, giving it a like really helps out a lot, and in turn, helps me get more treats for Lucky. So roll a crit on that like button today, and help Lucky get more treats. Now, let's get into the final story. Jormbo's Bizarre Harassment. So, you're playing with your best friend of roughly 15 years, someone you respect and look up to. Through high school, he was the coolest guy you knew, despite everyone else telling you that he's an annoying twat. Well, you decide to play D&D with this boy. He aspires to be a writer, to catalog the worst of human society, and the triumph that eventually ensues to conquer said vile behavior. Then, it turns out, your good time baby boy kind of just really sucks. But he's been telling you all along that it's everyone else who's wrong. The worst part is, you believed him. You believed that everyone else at the table was the asshole. You believed that your girlfriend was a conniving wench who only wanted in-game benefits. You believed that without him, the game wouldn't just fall apart, it would disintegrate into a fine toilet papery powder that gets all over the walls and in your mouth. I was the idiot who believed him. I was the idiot who put my faith and love into Jormbo, a man only capable of absorbing that positive energy and contributing nothing. A human leech. When, you may ask, did I finally get the message that this man was terrorizing my girlfriend and was controlling the table and everything else he could get his hands on in my life? It wasn't when he complained relentlessly every time we bought new minis by saying,
"You can just play D&D for free. You wasted your money."
It wasn't when we painted said minis in hours-long sessions of chill out with friend times. He would say,
"I think I'll get my partner over here to help paint. They'll do a much better job than you guys do."
It wasn't when he slept in our guest room every week and had the audacity to complain that the bed smelled funny, despite his refusal to wear deodorant.
"I don't know if you guys just never clean it or what, but it smells awful."
It wasn't when my girlfriend cooked us an entire dinner every week for every session, spending up to $100 each week without asking for anything in return, only for him to complain about it every time.
"You know, they make a better steak at that place down the road. Maybe just order from there next time."
It wasn't when he spent multiple hours after every session talking to me in post-session chatter, but only ever talked about how shitty everyone else was.
"If this table didn't have me in my writing, this would be unbearable."
It wasn't when he argued with my girlfriend over every single little thing she liked about the game and tormented her about having bad taste.
"Dragonborn just are a bad nonsense race, and paladins are only played by idiots. It's just the way it is."
It wasn't when he told the entire party that if they didn't do exactly what he wanted them to, his character was going to kill them all.
"Forge Cleric is just too good. None of you stand a chance, so it's my way or you die."
It wasn't when he agreed to something that the whole table agreed to do, and then spent the session letting us know how bored he was of all of this. And then, an adventure where he delivered the premise, and before the second session, even began to let us know that he was bored.
"There's just things my character would rather be doing. I'm just playing my character."
It wasn't when he refused to allow me to shift focus for 2.5 hours, insisting that the puzzle was yet to be solved, then tried to play it off as a joke.
"This is what you get when the DM..."
This one ends short because I cut him off and told him to knock it off, that he's talked enough. It wasn't when he claimed my girlfriend was controlling me because I kicked out the guy making horse sex jokes.
"I'm just making sure she doesn't have her hooks that deep in you, and that you made that choice because you wanted to."
It wasn't when he made direct rape threats to my girlfriend's character, a direct no-no for our table, and then after getting told never to do that again, came into the next session, mocking her for being uncomfortable with it.
"I think you really need to learn what consent actually means, haha."
It wasn't when my girlfriend broke down crying and told me that she was going to stop playing because she couldn't stand getting targeted like this anymore. The active ignoring, the constant verbal shutdowns, the condescending attitude towards anything she liked or disliked or even fucking existed near. And finally, it wasn't when I finally got the gall to stand up to him and tell him everything he'd been doing wrong, because when I did that, I got the verbal equivalent of a pat on the head as he spun me around and guided me out the door. No, I finally learned that Jormbo needed to go when he refused to play a session remotely, despite insisting another player play remotely when he was possibly exposed to COVID, and him simply opting not to play that night. We ended up having the most fun with D&D we ever had, as we played our first session ever without him. There was no controlling behavior. There was no main character syndrome. There was no treating the other players like they were stupid donkeys, and he was the penultimate big brain boy. There was no blatant targeting of my girlfriend, or trying to backseat DM. We played that session, and I made the choice. It was finally time to kick Jormbo after almost 2 years of his bullshit. And he still tried to take control of the kicking and pretend that he was opting out to not play anymore. Anyways, don't be like me. I'm a fucking idiot, and I let a charismatic figure blind me and guide me astray from the person I bought a fucking house with, which he also criticized to hell and back, despite being an unemployed knob living on his mom's couch. Jormbo, if you're reading this, suck a dick, dumb shit. Well, that's a way to put it. OP has let the hate flow through him, and by the sounds of things, for good reasons. I thought Jormbo was kind of a piece of shit after that first story, but after that laundry list of ridicule, I'd say that he's more of a mountain of shit. And you may ask why OP didn't do this sooner. Well, hindsight is always 20/20. Anyways, it sounds like everything has gotten better after the departure of Jormbo. And hopefully it stays that way, and we don't see a story entitled Jormbo Strikes Back. If you have a story that you would like to be read on the channel, be sure to post it to the dndDoge subreddit, or even contact me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may all of your rolls be natural 20s. Until next time.